Nam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhedu Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarasto Andakaro Vai Rukarasto Nivartakaha Andakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Gurupadam Bhujanmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So we are doing the chapter 13th of the Brahmananda section, the last 5 chapters of Pancadasi. And chapter 13 is about Advaitananda. So we went over the what's called the Bhumika. Bhumika means the foundation of the chapter 13th. What is it all about? So that's always a good thing to do whenever you are doing some sophisticated study of some sophisticated concepts. You should know what the main areas are so that you can concentrate on that. Keep that in your mind as you are going through the steps. So this is why, as we have said, Upakrama Upasamhara, Shadlinga Vicharaha, that in the very beginning you should say, this is what I'm going to tell you. Then you tell it, and then you say, this is what I told you. So the Bhumika is the Upakrama, it's the beginning. So what we saw about the chapter 13th was Advaitananda. So the Ananda, which comes from an understanding that I am non-dual. See, this is the thing. It's not as though there is non-duality in the world. Actually, if you want to start with the enunciation and conceptualization that there is non-duality in the world, it's okay, you can start with that. But as you progress on the understanding of non-duality somewhere in the world, it cannot be somewhere in the world because non-dual means absolutely there is only one thing in the whole creation. That's what non-duality means. One without a second. Ekam advitiyatvam. There's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It is the only one. The whole creation is nothing but one. So the whole creation being one may start with saying there is Advaita. There is Advaita. Forget about Advaita somewhere in the world. Leave aside somewhere in the world. Just say there is Advaita. Okay, so this is the beginning. The ending is, after you remove all the doubts, there is Advaita. What is left is, I am Advaita. This is what the goal of life should be. This is what is called Paramatma Prapti. This is God realization. That there is only one person in the whole, which is Ishvara, which is which is Brahman, and it cannot be but me. You see, you cannot be saying that I am separate from it, because then the non-duality suffers. So the Ananda that stems from non-duality culminates in a very clear understanding that I am non-dual. So this is a Shruti Vakya that I have to really think about. I don't have to just accept it. Acceptance doesn't mean anything. Understanding means everything. So the jnanam, the knowledge that I am non-dual, is really the one that gives you freedom. Dvaitadhi bhayam bhavati. Any kind of a fear, any kind of a concern, if you analyze the nature of fear and concern, it is because of Dvaita. There must be someone other than me that I am afraid of. You cannot be afraid of yourself. You are what you are. You can be afraid of what happens to you. That's a different matter, because you have a non-realistic assessment of who you are. You think you are the body, and so the body can be under threat from someone. But being the body means there is Dvaita. So regardless how you strip this version, only the Dvaita gives you bhayam. Bhayam means fear, or if not fear, concern. So concern about the future, regrets about the past, all those kinds of things are the ones that give you Dvaita. And so I have to really understand very clearly and very fully that I am Advaita. So this chapter is about Advaita Ananda, the Ananda that comes from non-duality. And why is this chapter being given now? Because if you remember, chapter 11 and 12, this is just a revision, just to remind you of what our foundation is, that the 11 was Yogananda. Yogananda means to withdraw your mind systematically from engagement with the world. And if you do this in a non-hurried, structured way, then yoga really does lead to ananda based on samadhi, on savikalpa samadhi and nirvikalpa samadhi. So that one you can get that. But as we saw that even nirvikalpa samadhi, no matter how accomplished and how accomplished, I don't think there's any other word, how accomplished you might be in the samadhi, because you can be very accomplished. I mean, now there are people that slowly develop. Takes a lifetime of developing slowly the ability to be with yourself without any obstruction, without any touching of the outside world, without any botheration from their mind. You're just by yourself. It's possible. And for hours, you can be there for hours. So if you ever had a chance to read this book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Swami Yogananda, which I had in the very beginning of my study of Vedanta, that was a very influential book to me. And there it pointed out that there are yogis that could meditate for years. So they are very accomplished yogis. But There is always a but. There is a limited time by which you will come out of the meditation. Why? Because the meditation is still in the Jagrat Avastha, in the waking state. And that means it is conditioned by your body, your mind, and the control of it. Regardless of all of that, it is limited. And we have talked about this many times, that there is a established fact that yogis, when they come out of meditation, are even more upset because they enjoyed that state of being so much that they don't want to come out. But because they're hungry or whatever, they have to come out. Anyway, that is the Yogananda was talked about in chapter 11. Then the chapter 12 started by somebody asking the question. This seems like an interesting way to attain a sense of happiness, but it is very difficult. I don't think I can do it. I don't have the time. I don't have the ability to do this meditation hours at an end. That's not my lifestyle. I have some things to do. So what is my cause lost? Can I do something? So they said, okay, instead of doing ekagrata, single-pointedness of the mind, as it was in the 11th chapter, there is another method that you can do which leads to the same goal, which is Atma Anatma Viveka. And that one is called Atmananda. Atmananda means that, really speaking, do a discriminative analysis of how you are fooling yourself by understanding that the Ananda comes from outside. It really comes from inside yourself. And not only that, if you analyze your life and your attitudes, your behavior, your transactions, all of your life's transactions, if you analyze, what you will find is you are naturally attuned to your own happiness. So this is called Atmananda, an Ananda which comes from the Atma. So if you analyze that, really, when you say that that thing gives me Ananda, or that person gives me Ananda, this is, if you strip away the covering, what's inside of that is that you like someone because that person makes you happy. And if that person stops making you happy, you stop loving that person. So in that analysis you can see you don't abandon the happiness for yourself. That one is kept untouched. But the other happiness can come and go. And if it is conducive to you, then your own love expresses as a love for someone else. If it is non-conducive, that doesn't matter to you, because it's not as though you waver your love for yourself. Your love for yourself naturally remains the same. And it should, because this is an indication of the non-changing Atma. So if the Anatma is conducive, wonderful. If it is non-conducive, leave it. So this also proves that really the fundamental thing is Atmananda. So this was explained in some detail in the 12th chapter of the Pancadasi. Okay? Then we started the 13th chapter last time, and where it was pointed out that, okay, I understand the viveka and the ekagrata, but isn't there duality? Because you are talking in terms of someone else which is conducive to you. Are you not? So we say, yes, that's true. I am talking about someone else who is either conducive or non-conducive to you, who is making you happy or unhappy. So that means that there are two entities involved. So one is the outside and one is the inside. One is someone else and one is you. So there is duality. So I don't understand how Shastra says that one person is non-dual, but your explanation of the nature of Atmananda involves duality. Why? Because you're talking in terms of someone else being conducive to you or not conducive to you. That means there is someone else, isn't it? So isn't this a violation of your own principles that you are non-dual? So to answer that valid doubt is the main reason for chapter number 13. And it says, no, actually we do start with duality, but that is just to get things going. Because even you are, we say this, Guru Atmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine. There is a teacher, there is a student, there is a discussion, there is some starting point of the duality. Yeah, so there is some duality, but this duality is just a starting point. It's not going to last. That's not what the end point is. So just like, for example, if you are talking to, if there is there are two rooms, adjacent rooms, and one room is the student room and the other one is the teacher room. And the student room is an unhappy student room, saying, I'm not happy with my life. So the next door room, the teacher room, says, why? Why are you unhappy? What's wrong? He says, I don't know, I just feel limited. He says, you feel limited? I don't feel limited. He says, that's very strange that you don't feel limited. You may be a little bigger room than me, but you are also a limited room, so you should feel limited. He says, no, I don't. So he says, why? How can I feel limited? He says, that's because the way you're looking at yourself needs to be reoriented. In fact, you and I are one and the same. There is no duality between you and I. So now there is a teacher room talking to a student room, so there is some duality. But this duality is just to start the dialogue and the teaching. But the end point of that is there is only one space. I'm also that space, you are also that space. So it's just that you are accenting your upadhi is too much. I'm not accenting the upadhi. It just happens to be there. I took birth into this life, but someone told me that really my I-ness is the space, not the upadhi. And once that I understood, I said, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. The walls can come and walls can fall down, but I am still remaining the same. I'm untouched by it. I'm too subtle for it. Nothing can happen to me. I cannot be polluted. The night doesn't touch me. I don't get dark. I am the very Akasha. The fire doesn't burn me. There's no smoke. Because smokiness and darkness and the fear of being killed and so on all comes from the upadhi, not from the reality of who I am. Once that was clear to me that I am the very space which is untouched by anything other than that, I'm free. And you should be too, because we and I are the one and the same. So here they say that yes, there is duality, we understand that, but this duality is just to start the discussion. When we are hopefully successful in finishing the discussion, you will find there is no duality. And so that is the Advaitananda which is being discussed in this 13th chapter. And so this stage of teaching and the method of teaching should be well appreciated, because if one doesn't see this, and quite frankly I didn't see it for a long time until it was really clear to me that the end point of, so I'll give you an example. In the only in some of the Upanishads does it specifically clearly say that there is no shrishti, there is no real creation. And so what it means is, but it says there is a shrishti. Ekam advitiyam e asti. In the beginning, there was only one, and then there was a shrishti that came. So it talks about the shrishti. More than that, it talks about karma and karma phala, karana karya, behavior, that you are what you had been trying to do all your life, and now you are something in this life, and this karma will be added to your previous tendencies, and you will have a next life, and so this goes on and on. This also is a srishti of some kind. And so in the advanced discussions, see, this is where one has to be very careful. This is why the study of Vedanta takes some time. It is not you cannot just say Tattvamasi and just be done with it, unless you have studied all that in the previous life, which is a possibility. But generally speaking, those are rarities that we don't have, and so we don't understand it in the beginning, but that doesn't mean that it cannot be understood at the end. So in the advanced texts of Vedanta, it is pointed out there is no srishti. There is no real creation. Creation means real creation. Something got created. As we saw in the last class, this is what is called Parinami Karanam, Upadana Karanam, and Arambaka Upadana Karanam. And even in the Vivarta Upadana Karanam, which is the hallmark of the Vedantins, one can say, this is interesting, one can say that, you know what a Vivarta Upadana Karanam is. We've already explained this very well in the last, not very well, but we've explained it. Why should I say very well? I may not have explained it very well. So we've explained it to a certain extent. And what we said was that the formation of forms and names and forms from something very basic like clay is the vivarta, where you make something very visible in terms of name and form, but there is no real change to the adhisthana. It all remains the same. This is called vivarta. So what we were saying is that in the relative beginning introduction to Vedanta, one can even say this, I understand the applicability of Vivarta Upadana Karanam as being fundamentally more applicable than Parinama Upadana Karanam and certainly Arambha Upadana Karanam. Or as the Buddhists say, Sanghata Upadana Karanam. So that I won't spend much time on, but Sanghata means a kind of a combination of things. And when you fall apart, they just disappear. It's called Sanghata Upadana Karanam. But if you leave aside, at least the Parinama and Arambhaka are very much there. So compared to that, the Vivarta Karanam is more encompassing, subtler, and understandable. But even in the Vivarta Upadana Karanam, there is some change. There is some change, isn't it? Because supposing you have a lump of clay, how can the lump of clay become a teacup? Unless you shape it and you have to put it on a machine which rotates and you have to make sure that it is nice and round, isn't it? So it is useful, it has some functionality, it has some handle. So this is a change. It's a change in the clay. So how can you say that the clay remains the same? Because it doesn't remain the same. There is a change on it. Granted, it's a temporary change, and then it would go back to being clay if you, supposing a teacup breaks. It would take a long time for the teacup to become clay again. Because it has hardened surface, you have to put it in water for a long time, and then slowly it would dissolve and the water will evaporate. All of that, and slowly you can knead it back to the shape that it used to be. All these are changes. Changes. So that means that the Vivarta also is endowed with change, isn't it? So there, the Acharyas and the Vedic principle says, do you know something? Congratulations. Shall I give you the answer to your doubts? The doubt is, like, isn't it changing? Vivarta also has some change, even though much less of a change than the other one. We say Atma is Niravayava, has no parts. It's not Savayava, it is Niravayava. Nirangaha, Shuddhaha, Asangaha, like the sky. Like the space. There is a difference between those two words. Like space, because the space doesn't have any parts. It cannot be colored. It cannot be combined with anything. And so the Atma is, this is what Vedanta says in the Bhagavad Gita. This is what it says: Na jayate na mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha. You cannot burn it. This is exactly right. So if that is the case, how can it change? How can you talk about Vivarta change for the Atma? So the Acharyas say, congratulations. I'm very happy that you are you are asking this? So he says, okay, I'm okay with your congratulations, but can you please explain it to me? So Vedanta says, there is no change in the reality. And if there is no change in the reality, and there is a change which appears, we know the only answer. There is only an appearance of change, no real change. That is the answer. And the implications are enormous. In all the commentaries on all these Upanishads and so on, Karikas and Bhashyas and so on, and the advanced study of that, it is said, we talked about change and Vivarta and Shrishti, the very beginning of the world, the end of the world, only in the beginning. Just like the teacher room and the student room, they need to have a dialogue. Starting with the teacher asking the student, you look very unhappy. So even in this dialogue, there is some difference between the teacher and the student, isn't it? Because the teacher is addressing the student as an isolated being, that you seem to be very unhappy. So even in this teaching dialogue, there is a dissemination of duality. So similarly, in the understanding of Shrishti and so on and so forth, there is a discussion about the beginning and the end. But once the student becomes thoughtful and is in tune with the teaching, is absorbed in the teaching, which means he is sincere, he or she wants to know, then the teacher can say, my dear student, can I tell you the real truth? There is no Shrishti. There is no Karya Karana Bhava at all. There is only one thing. And if there is an appearance of Shrishti, if there is a Shrishti, it is just an appearance of Shrishti, not a real Shrishti. And so a much more advanced answer given to a sadhaka, to a thinking person who really is committed, is the example of a dream. Because if you analyze the experience of a dream, it is different from the experience of a clay becoming a teapot. There it is vivarta upadana karanam. So even last class we talked about the three different types of upadana karanam, right? Parinami, arambaka, vivarta, etc. And we only said there is only three types. Now we are throwing all three of them out. There is nothing in there. Means that really speaking, the reality of the world, this is where we all have to graduate to. And that is that we need to take the world. Take the world means whatever we experience, whatever we go through in our life and so on, as an appearance that for whatever reason appears to be there but will go away. So even when it appears to be there, And so when it goes away, like before we do that, when it goes, before it was there and after you were there, you were a singular person. See the analogy of a waking person, what is called Vishwa. You see that? So we saw that in the, we'll do that again in the Mandukya Upanishad. So there is a person in the waking state called Vishwa. Vishwa is the Jiva, who is the waker. Then in the dream state, there is a person called Taijasa. So there are two people, right? There is Vishwa and there is Taijasa. And what Taijasa is has nothing to do with what Vishwa is. It's a completely different play, a completely different set of emotions about transactions and so on. Happens to us every night. We come up with, multiple dreams, and each dream is a separate creation. And you play a different part. Your experiences are different. What happens to you, what your emotions are, what your thoughts are, what your plans are all totally different. So you are multiple people. But in terms of the relationship of the waking state and the dream state, see this clearly. In the dream state, you experience duality of the dream, multiplicity of the dream, because you are only one person in the whole universe of the dream. You're only one person. That's what your identity is. You are also creating the otherness of the people. You are creating the otherness of mountains and rivers and animals and cars and the sky and the sun, and you have multiplicity of all of those, and you are the karta and the bhokta. You're only a part of the whole creation of the dream. So you have multiplicity, you have duality. Multiplicity means duality, or duality means multiplicity. But that multiplicity, that duality is an appearance. It's an appearance. And once this is really explained by our Mahatmas, and they say that really speaking, if you look at the dream, there is no real karana karya, there is no real shrishti. Forget about karya karana. We'll come to that on a separate one. But I say that if you analyze the dream, when did the srishti begin? Srishti means creation. Srishti means creation. When did the creation begin? So now we all discuss it. How old is this world? When did the world come about? And so now there are so many scientists involved in this study. You cannot believe how many people, thinking, intelligent, smart people, are engaged in finding out the origin of the world. And the amount of money that is invested being spent, not only once invested, which is being spent in trying to answer this question. When did it begin? And it's interesting. The real interesting question is, supposing we find out this is when we began, so what? How will this help us? So if you ask, supposing there is a meeting going on, all these, very, very smart people, because they are highly intelligent, their memory and supposing you ask a question, you just stand there, people say, okay, so this was the talk on the origin of the world. Are there any questions? People can say. Supposing you raise your hand and say, yeah, I do have a question. Why are we doing this? So everybody will say, why are we doing this? What do you mean? We have to find out. How did we come about? Okay, so supposing we found out this was done in 17.735 trillion years ago, plus or minus a billion years. Supposing we find that out. Now, how does that help me? Oh, well, I don't know. It'll be fun to find that out. Anyway, there is so much thinking going on the Shrishti. So now I ask you, on the very elaborate, sophisticated experience called the dream state, when did it begin? Did it begin in a very systematic manner, where there was some molecules and the stars that all kind of came together, and then there was a black hole, and then suns came, and then satellites were formed? Was it like that? I said, no, there wasn't like that. But really speaking, all the transactions in the dream were happening. All the ingredients of sukha dukkha are still there. Likes, dislikes, I don't like that person, I like this person. Why is that person bothering me? What's going on? Same kind of things that are happening in the waking state are happening in the dream state. So all the ingredients that you need to have a very sophisticated thing are done without a srishti. Without a srishti. There is no srishti. You don't need srishti. This is the answer. This is the sophisticated, this is the advanced, this is the answer, this is what is taught if there is a course of Vedanta. Supposing we have a course of Vedanta, and we do, where you study Tattva Bodha, and which is Atma, Anatma, and Sadhana Chatushtaya, and this, that, or the other, Ishvara, karma, karma phala, and so on, just the basics. Then you have the college of Vedanta, undergraduate. And the undergraduate will be where you keep on studying Pancha Mahabhutas, subtle bodies. Then you have, how the Panchakosha Viveka is done, the Ananda, and then Karma Phala. You have Karma Kanda, you have Jnana Kanda, you have Swargalokas, you have Devata. All of those is undergraduate. This is all undergraduate. You have to take many courses about Devatas, courses about doubts about the Vedanta. You have to take a Brahma Sutra. You have to do all of this to kind of get a more advanced view of what the Vedanta is. and how the Srishti is. In the beginning there was no, and how long the Srishti is. All of that is given in the Vedanta. So all that is studied and so on. Then you get some kind of it may not be a formal degree, but you feel, okay, now I think I've done. So this is what is done in our 2.5-year courses, which is called Prasthanatraya. So you have the 10 Upanishads, you have the Bhagavad Gita, thoroughly understanding Bhagavad Gita, every verse from the chapter 1 to the chapter 18, and then you have Brahma Sutra. When you've done that, now the undergraduate is now over. You can quote Vedantic literature, there are some Prakarana Granthas, all of that is done. Are you finished? Undergraduate is not finished. Undergraduate means that you now have a solid foundation of understanding. So just like an undergraduate engineer or undergraduate doctor or so on, you can able to pretty much see what is going on. But you are not an expert yet. There you have to go to graduate school, you have to really specialize exactly what is going on. In the graduate school of Vedanta, it says, are you ready for this? Forget about everything that you learnt in undergraduate. What? Don't forget about it, but there is something more to learn. Oh, I thought you told me then that this is all there is. We had to tell you that because otherwise you won't have a sense of accomplishment, of completion, and so on and so forth. You have to have that so you feel good about it. There is no real Srishti. What? No. Yeah, but then, I think there is Srishti because I'm born out of the bodies of my mother and father, and there is continuity, there is samskaras, and so on. So how can you say there is no Srishti? Of course there is Srishti. Nope, there is no Srishti. If there is no Srishti, then what is all this? It is an appearance. An appearance? So the appearance means that it will just go away when I just blow it away and say, phew, it should go away, but it doesn't. It looks so solid. My problems yesterday also in here and today and tomorrow. I have not paid my mortgage and I'm worried about it. These are all real things. How can you say it's an appearance? It's an appearance. It's an appearance. And it is an appearance because, so there we say, there is not even a vivarta upadana karana. Even that is an undergraduate study. It is not the graduate study. The graduate study is, even when there is appearance of duality, there is non-duality. Really? How? So this is the study of is there also just a basic study. This is not an advanced study. In Pancadasi, this is also just taking some points of it and pointing out this is the direction we have to go. But it doesn't give you all the wherewithal and so on. All that comes from probably, with a very thorough study of Brahma Sutras and so on, or you can just take the Mandukya Karika with Kabandukya with Gaudapada's Karika, that is a much more detailed enunciation of where there is no Srishti. So very briefly what it says, since we are talking about it and so on, that listen, you have the ability to create a Srishti in your own mind, and then you get entrapped in it. You create a certain sense of reality, and yes, there is the sense of reality does have some ingredients to it. So for instance, so listen to this carefully. So for instance, if you look at your dreams, just analyze, this is what we are talking about. If you look at the dreams are created by your mind from your previous experiences, isn't it? Because the dream carries the samskaras of your Jagrat Avastha, from your waking state. So your memories of the waking state turn into fodder for creating your dream state. So there is some karya-karana bhava in that sense. So there is a samskara. And the samskaras are ongoing. You see, they're ongoing because your experiences of your waking state are ongoing, and from time to time, every day, they turn into a created play by your mind in the form of the dream. And now if you look at the created play in the dream, it does not have any real creation in the sense that it has a beginning or an end or anything. It just suddenly pops up. Excuse me. So the dream characters suddenly pop up. You don't have time for your children to take birth and have 9 months to be born, to stay in your mom's tummy, and then you come out, and then no time. Suddenly you find a child. Suddenly you find an old man. Suddenly, just suddenly, without even realizing it. You don't even know exactly when it happens. Not as though you have a timer on your hand and says, okay, I started dreaming. There you can do some REM analysis and so on, but that is not accurate. It's just an approximation. And it doesn't matter anyway. What does it help? It doesn't help anything. The main thing is that you have a set of experiences that come about without any warning and disappear without any warning. It's all an appearance. But an appearance which is an ongoing experience based on the samskaras, based on your experiences of your waking state. Okay, how does this help me? You're talking about all of this and so on and so forth. And you're talking about graduate courses where you are all of the things about Srishti and Karana Karya and Karma Phala are thrown out of the window. And you're saying this is an appearance. How does that help me? It helps me because, really speaking, Even your waking experiences are like that. What? Waking experiences are like that? No, they're not. Waking experiences have much more structure, much more causality. There's a cause. There's my mom, there's my dad, my grandma, maternal grandma, and their genes, their names, and their skin colors, and their religion. All those things influence me. It's not a sudden kind of a thing I just came about. Well, in a way you are right, but in the primary way you are wrong. In what way am I right? And in what way am I primarily wrong? Okay. We saw that your dream experience was due to your samskaras of your waking experience, isn't it? Very obvious. This is where what the Shruti has to say has to be aligned with what my experiences are in life. Otherwise, what Shruti says doesn't make any sense to me. If I cannot confirm it from my experience, then it doesn't really help me. I won't accept it. But I do accept the fact that my dream experiences are a direct result of my previous waking experience. Okay. Vedanta says, okay, you're listening to me? Yes. Your waking experiences, the way you look at yourself, is the samskara from your previous waking experiences in previous lives. Some in this life, but even the beginning of this life's experiences are based on the experiences of the previous life. So in that sense, yes, there is continuity. Just like there is continuity between your waking experience and your dream experience, similarly, when you largen this sphere of analysis, you will see that your waking experience also is a result of your previous experiences. It's a continuity. So in that sense, you are right. In that sense, you are right, because indeed, where you are born, from which you are born, under what conditions you are born, are all the result of your previous experiences. But this is true of even the dream state. Because in the dream state also, I deal with people that I have met in one form or the other in my waking state. And they say, it's very interestingly, they say sometimes even the experiences of your previous lives also get some input into your dream experience. Because you can say, who was that person? I never met him before. You might have met him in the previous life. That's a possibility. We're not absolutely sure of it, but we don't eliminate that either. So what happens is that in your waking state, you are fully in the influence of your sense organs, your present experience, and so on. So there is no space for the previous life's person to even enter this. But in the dream state, you are in a never land. You are just making up things on your own, based on previous samskaras, and some of that might have come from the previous life. Anyway, that is besides the point. So let's go back to the main argument. Main argument is that yes, we agree with you that there is some cause-effect relationship between your previous life and this life. We don't say that they're unconnected. Like we never said that your dream is unconnected to your waking state. We never said that. That is also connected. One is samskara from the other one. All we are saying is that even the previous life, the larger canvas, influences your present life. So there we agree with you. Okay? But here is where you need to now see. This is where the rubber meets the road. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that your dream experience was influenced by your waking experience. It does not matter because it gives you an unreal experience which you abandon quickly. So this is the appearance. The nature of appearance is that it comes and it goes, untouched. You are untouched by that. It is not parinama karana, it is not vivatta karana, it is no karana. And even when you are a dual person in the dream, you are still as a non-dual person. It's not as though the non-dual person became a dual person. You see, this is how it would be in a parinami and arambhaka. That at one time you were non-dual, that non-dual means that you are a singular person. A waker. A waker is a singular person. When you start dreaming, you become multiple people, isn't it? You only become part of it. And in fact, all the things in the dream are also you. So you now embrace duality, multiplicity. But this embracing of multiplicity or duality is false. It is an appearance. So the singularity never really goes. It's not as though during the dream the singularity disappears. It is still there, but somehow some superimposition happens to create a false impression of duality. So the duality is false. The singularity is real. In between the dream and the waking state. Now let's apply this to the seeming duality of the waking state. What we are saying is this. Even the seeming duality of life is an appearance. It suddenly comes up like a dream. And yes, it appears to have a little bit more structure. It takes you a while to become a baby. It takes you much longer to become a toddler. Then all of those things are sequentially more structured, but it doesn't interfere with the basic thing that it is really a non-dual person who seems to become a dual person. The whole thing is nothing but an appearance. And the nature of the appearance, so the question is, so if it's an appearance, so what? So a lot. If you just see the fact that the nature of an appearance is that there is no real change. So there we say that the graduate level understanding of Vedanta is that even if it is not even a vivarta upadana karanam, it is really in appearance like a dream, or an appearance like a snake on a rope, or my most favorite new example from Swami Akhandananda ji, it is like seeing the blueness of the sky on the space. Seeing the blueness of the sky on the space is a very good example, because one can argue that once you see the non-reality of a snake on the rope by shining some more light on it, then you cannot even bring back the vision of the snake even if you wanted to. You'll say, how did I look upon this as a snake? I wonder what kind of a snake I was thinking of. How well you can just do this and so on and so forth. Nothing, no much you do to your eyes or your whatever it is, you distort your face. You can never even visualize. It's gone. All you see is rope, 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 rope. Here the situation is different. This is what is called badhita anuvritti. So this was discussed at great length with Swami Dayanand ji. And all the acharyas point this out. This is a very basic element of Vedanta. That what will happen is, the same thing is true in the dream also, because in the dream also, when the dream finishes, it is gone. You cannot remember the dream. But in the case of a Jivan Mukta, what happens is that the experiences continue. But the experiences are falsified. Even if they are there, they are falsified. That's why the example of the blueness of the sky is a very beautiful example, I think. Because once who knows that this space cannot have any color, and yet it appears to be blue. It's a very interesting creation of Ishvara. I think I've told you this, that Swami Dayanand used to say this, that really the blueness of an appearance is an indication of the depth of the experience. So the water in the ocean also appears blue. Sky also appears to be blue. It's a very interesting choice of color by Ishvara. He depicts infinity with blue. So even if you see blueness on the sky, you cannot say, oh my gosh, the space has turned blue. I am now totally confused. You don't say that. So similarly, in the badhita anuvritti, so this is a very, very, in fact we were going to do all of this, I didn't really even get into some of the specifics that I wanted to do, and I think I'll probably defer it to later, but this is really what the basis of the chapter 13th is, that really speaking, the so-called duality that you speak of is just an appearance, and it is good for talking purposes, but there is no real duality. You are the non-dual person. You are the Paramatma. This has to be understood through all the examples and so on. So this is the basis of the chapter 13th. And so we will, I'll just pause here. There's some interesting things to talk about because here then there is the discussion about the Maya Shakti. How does because the mind needs more reassurance that what this is really true. There is what is the meaning of appearance? How does appearance comes about? How does it go? All of those have to be discussed. And so the more discussion about the Maya Shakti and how it appears and how it disappears and so on is necessary, and we will touch on some of that. We cannot be that detailed about it. That has to come from some Upanishad, but we will touch upon the basic aspects of that next time when we meet. I forget when the next Tuesday, because next Tuesday I will be gone. So probably 2 weeks from today, approximately, we will reconvene, and I'll just make sure that I point out exactly where I ended so we can continue with this discussion. So with that, let me close today's class. Om Asato ma Satgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. All right, good. Good to see you all. Happy that you attended the class. And all season's greetings to you. Happy New Year. Maybe we'll see you 2 weeks from today. Hari Om.